my birthday, on my 60th birthday, they was able to arrange for me to step foot back in my ancestral Fula village to be received by my Fula tribe.
On her 60th birthday, Queen stepped into a village in Guinea-Bissau, West Africa, a place she had never been, a place whose name she had not known for most of her life, and yet she understood it as home. Not the home she had grown up in, not the home she had built in Atlanta, not even the home she created after leaving the United States. This was older than all of those places, older than her mother, her grandmother, and older than any family story that had survived long enough to be told. But Queen's journey did not begin in Africa. It began years earlier with a pension check and the realization that after 27 years of teaching, the life she had been promised did not feel much like freedom. I'm Heather Holt, and this is Change Happened, Then What? A documentary storytelling podcast about the lives we build, the moments that change us, and who we become afterward. This is part 1 of Queen's journey. There is a version of retirement we're taught to expect. You give decades of your life to a profession, you save what you can, then one day you step away. Maybe it's to travel, sleep a little later, or maybe the hours that once belonged to everyone else finally start belonging to you. Queen had spent 27 years as a teacher and as an administrator. She had done what responsible adults are told to do.
Had I not moved to Mexico after retiring from teaching 27 years, had I just decided to stay on the wheel, in the matrix, in the system, and working until I couldn't work anymore, and then after that living substandardly because I wasn't working, had I just made the choice, because it came a point when I first retired, after 27 years of teaching, when I got my pension check, I looked at, oh, wow, well, okay, that'll pay the rent. So no biggie. I'll just, do some things to supplement, some fun things.
At first, supplementing her pension sounded manageable, temporary even. A few jobs, a little extra income, something to close the space between the retirement she had imagined and the retirement she could actually afford.
Then I did for a year, Heather. I did. I was an Uber driver, man. I did some remote curriculum design. Of course, I taught online. One of my coolest jobs was that I was a shuttle driver for a transportation company that serviced the railroad. So I was taking engineers and conductors to and from their trains.
Driving through the city at odd hours, picking up engineers and conductors, delivering people to trains that were already going somewheres. But Queen was beginning to wonder where her own life was headed.
So a year into after being retired and kind of doing these hustle jobs, to supplement, I swear something said, hey, wait a minute. I'm going to always have to do this. I'm going to always have to work in order to supplement my pension. And I didn't want to be 70 years old saying, welcome to Walmart.
Queen was not criticizing work. She had worked her entire adult life. What unsettled her was the possibility that work would consume whatever remained of her life.
So I started researching the top 10 places to retire. This is back in 2016. Okay. And at that time, it was, of course, the ones that pretty much still are today: Panama, Costa Rica, Ecuador, Mexico, Thailand, Colombia, Portugal, those places. So I'm an avid deep diver and researcher. I guess that's maybe my teaching background. And I fell across Lake Chapala. You know, Mexico has 32 states. And in the state of Jalisco, it houses the largest freshwater lake in the country of Mexico. It's called Lake Chapala.
Work, bills, work, bills. A life reduced to maintenance. Queen could see the years ahead of her, and she did not want them. Not that way, anyhow. So she began looking beyond the life she had been given. Queen describes herself as a deep diver, the kind of person who does not simply wonder whether another life exists.
Now, surrounding that lake, and especially on the north shore of that lake, it's the largest expat community in the country of Mexico. Expat being, expatriate. And it checked all the boxes for me. See, because at the time I was living in Atlanta, and it was a 3.5-hour nonstop plane ride from Atlanta into Guadalajara, which is the capital of Jalisco. So that was the first box, just location, Second box was climate. The Lake Chapala area was voted by National Geographic to be the second best climate in the world. Now, see, it's because there on that Lake Chapala region of Jalisco, it's eternally spring.
Lake Chapala sits south of Guadalajara. Mountains rise around the water. Small towns follow the shoreline. And for decades, people from outside Mexico have settled there, drawn by the climate, the cost of living, and the possibility of beginning again. For Queen, it began to check every box.
And then the third one, of course, was just the expat, the largest expat community in the country of Mexico. And with that, I made my move. I researched almost a year and a half, and I landed very smoothly into the Lake Chapala area.
She researched the move for nearly a year and a half. Not impulsive, not careless. Queen was not running away without a plan. She was studying the possibility of building a life that required less survival. Then, in 2017, she packed her bags and moved from Atlanta to Mexico, alone.
The distractions was gone. I was out of the matrix. I was out of the system. I actually met me, the inside of me with no...
I actually met me. It's a small sentence for such a large thing. When the daily pressure eased, Queen found there was someone underneath it, someone who had ideas waiting for enough quiet to become visible. In Mexico, Queen began writing. People wanted to know how she had done it, how she had moved abroad. What should someone consider before leaving one country and building a life at another? Her answer became a book.
Well, first the book and then the brand, because people wanted to know about this move, that I made to this, relocating out. What you did, what? And they wanted to know how. So that's where Considerations, the Guide for Moving Abroad, came about. 10 chapters, each chapter a consideration. Consider visas, consider downsizing, consider healthcare,
One book, led to another. The writing expanded, the spiritual work began, and the growing sense that the life Queen had chosen was opening into something she could not have planned while she was still driving through Atlanta, fitting work around a pension that barely paid the rent.
What if I wouldn't have stayed? There would be no Africa. There would be no books. There would be no curriculum for Generation Alpha.
There are decisions that look small from the outside. A plane ticket, a lease, a different address. But sometimes a decision changes not only where a person lives, but what becomes possible through them. Queen began preparing an 8-month workshop called The Soul's Journey, and then the phone rang.
Here I am in Mexico, and I'm getting ready. There were the books, and I was getting ready to start an 8-month workshop. It was going to be called The Soul's Journey. It was going to include my books, one which was entitled 52 Insight for Living New Earth Now. And I had called the gurus from around Lakeside in meditation and movement and art. And it was going to be this 8-month workshop where we would journey through just the soul, opening up the soul. And I gave a presentation. People had signed up, and then I got the call. That call was from my hometown in Detroit, that mom and pop had left the house via ambulance within a week of each other. Pop was 99 with dementia. Mom was in her mid-80s with her own set of medical issues.
From Mexico, Queen believed her parents were being cared for, so she expected to travel to Detroit, understand what had happened, help make arrangements, and return to the life that was waiting for her in Mexico.
I was under the impression that everything was being taken care of.
Queen had left Detroit years earlier. She had built a life in Atlanta, then another in Mexico. Now she found herself back in the city where her story had begun, entering a role she had not expected. She was going to be a daughter, a caregiver, and a witness.
When I got there, they were both in rehab. He was on one end of the hallway, and she was on the other end of the hallway. Now, I'm the only girl, and I do have 2 older brothers, Dumb and Dumber. And I thought that when I got there that I would just be rolling up my sleeves for a little bit, getting in where I fit in and really help, bring about some changes that needed to take place for them. Little did I know that I would then become their full-time caregiver and then live back in Detroit for 3.5 years and 4 consecutive winters.
4 consecutive winters. Queen repeats that little detail when she tells her story, maybe because she had grown used to an eternal spring, or maybe because caregiving changes the way time is measured, not in years, but in winters. And the gradual realization that the life you paused may not be waiting for you in the same form when you return.
Once they did leave the rehabilitation centers from their falls, because they had both fallen, that there was no one to really, to take care of them. So I, put my soul's journey and all of that I was going to do, I just laid that down and I focused on my parents, taking care of them.
The workshop was laid down. The plans were set aside. Queen had escaped the cycle of working simply to survive. Now she was giving her days to the people whose lives had made hers possible. not because the system demanded it, but because they needed her. We'll return to Queen's story in just a moment. Sometimes caring for everything and everyone else means we forget to check in with ourselves. Pure Energy Apothecary creates small batch wellness products made right here in Vermont, including their magnesium butter, designed to become an easy part of your evening wind-down routine. Because taking care of yourself doesn't always have to be complicated. Sometimes it can simply be a quiet moment at the end of a long day. Visit pureenergyvt.com and use code PURECHANGE at checkout to get your 20% off today. That's pureenergyvt.com and use code PURECHANGE for 20% off. Now, back to Queen's story. Caregiving can make a life very small, not unimportant, but small in geography. The same rooms, the same hallways, the same route to an appointment. A person can spend years tending to the needs immediately in front of them, while another part of life waits quietly in the background. Queen had gone to Mexico looking for freedom. She returned to Detroit because the generation before her could no longer care for itself.
Mom and Pop both passed in 2022, within 10 months of each other. Mom on New Year's Eve. And when we laid her to rest, 17 days after we laid her to rest, is when I took my pilgrimage to Africa.
17 days after the funeral, Queen had already planned the trip, but grief changed what she carried onto the plane.
She passed on New Year's Eve, and we had her funeral on January 14th, and her birthday is January 18th. But yeah, 17 days after January 14th. That blog, I think that's chapter 3. You'll see me on the plane, and I'm holding a picture, a necklace of my mom. And certain sites that I visited, you know, I'm holding her.
Her mother had not fully understood Queen's discovery. Family histories are rarely clean. Stories are handed down. Identities overlap. What families believe about their beginnings can become part of who they are, even when another story waits further back.
And I remember, you know, telling her about, hey, Ma, I just discovered, I'm going to go to Africa, to Guinea-Bissau. And, she really didn't want to hear, because her mind went back as far as, we are from the Choctaw tribe or something, Yeah, possibly, but that's what we got mixed with. The original bloodline is that of the Fula people. That was you're talking to somebody in her 80s. So, wasn't a whole lot of grasping of that concept. However, she was with me.
Queen had always wanted to visit Africa, but Africa is not a single destination. It's a continent of more than 50 countries, thousands of communities, languages, histories, and identities. Queen did not want to choose a familiar destination simply so she could say she had been there. She wanted to know where she was going and why.
Now, a lot of people, say, want to take that trip to Africa, especially descendants, African Americans. We want to go back to the motherland, of course, and visit. And we do. But we usually go to Nigeria or Kenya or Ghana or South Africa, just taking that trip. But I wanted to be intentional with my trip to Africa, being that I always wanted to go. And I don't know if you know this site called Ancestry.
Queen chose a test designed to trace a direct maternal or paternal line to a present-day African country and ethnic group represented in its database.
With Ancestry.com, if you take their DNA test, you'll discover that you're a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and your region is over there, But over 20 years ago, a group of black scientists got together and they created the largest database of black blood in the world. And they're called AfricanAncestry.com. Now, if you take that DNA test, not only will it tell you out of the 54 sovereign countries on the continent of Africa where your bloodline, be it paternal or maternal, originated in, what country, it will also tell you your tribe. So I took the African Ancestry DNA test and discovered on my maternal side that I am Fula from Guinea-Bissau, West Africa. I am from the Fula or Fulani tribe in Guinea-Bissau, West Africa. Now, mind you, I had never heard of Guinea-Bissau, West Africa. It's not like, I have all 54 of those countries memorized.
Guinea-Bissau sits on the western coast of Africa, between Senegal and Guinea. It's small in size, but for Queen, the discovery gave shape to something enormous. Her family history did not begin with enslavement in America. There was a place before the ship, a homeland with a name.
But what one person would discover is that, especially of African descent, is that it's going to, if they were to take that test, it's going to fall on that western coastline of Africa, not so much north or south or even east, but on that western coastline. One of those countries is where they would find their original bloodline, because, of course, that western coastline is where the Atlantic slave trade has taken place.
Queen began researching again. The teacher in her returned to the work. She learned about repatriation efforts in several African countries. She found a group that helped descendants navigate a return to Guinea-Bissau, and they began planning her journey.
What I also discovered, once I discovered that I am Fula from Guinea-Bissau, West Africa, I did a deep dive, and started researching, of course, and discovered that there's several countries in Africa who are participating in something called repatriation. And what that means is that if you can show through DNA testing, like with African Ancestry, that your original bloodline originated in that country, you could apply for citizenship, and those countries also have agencies or groups that help those navigate that process. So luckily, Guinea-Bissau was one such country, and I came across a group called Repat Guinea-Bissau. And I got with them, and we planned a trip. It was a solo trip.
Queen had moved to Mexico alone. Now she would cross the Atlantic alone, but she did not understand herself to be traveling by herself. The itinerary placed Queen in the ancestral village on her 60th birthday, a milestone often used to measure the years already lived. But for Queen, it became a meeting point between what came before and whatever would follow.
On my 60th birthday, I stepped foot in my ancestral village, Fula village, in Guinea-Bissau, West Africa. Now, see, what that meant for me, and what was so groundbreaking, and what actually had me come back and start a nonprofit organization, but it was the fact that when I went back, I took my mother's 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 mother, dating anywhere between 200, 250 years.
They all went back. The women whose names Queen may never know. The women whose lives could not be preserved in family photographs. And the women separated from their homeland by capture, forced passage, enslavement, and generations of silence. Queen stood in the village as one person, but she experienced the moment as a return made by many. Queen documented the trip: 7 days in Guinea-Bissau, 2 weeks in Egypt, the Nile, the pyramids, a journey she later shared through a 16-chapter blog called My Soul's Journey Home. But the most important part of the journey could not be contained in an itinerary. It was the way the village changed her understanding of what families carry.
And chapter 7 of that blog, you will actually see me. There's a video of me entering into my ancestral village. So it was extremely enlightening, but also it helped me to understand trauma and generational trauma.
Generational trauma is a broad term. It can describe the effects of violence, displacement, oppression, grief, and survival continue to shape families after the original event has passed, sometimes through stories, sometimes through silence, sometimes through parenting, relationships, fear, vigilance, or behaviors no one in the family can fully explain. Researchers continue to study the biological effects of severe stress and the possible ways some effects may influence later generations. But Queen's understanding is also spiritual, rooted in what she felt when she returned to the place from which an ancestor had been taken.
And there is a thing called generational trauma that a lot of people are not aware of. It's in your DNA. If trauma can be passed down through DNA, then healing can be passed up.
Queen does not claim to know exactly how the healing moves. She cannot diagram it. She cannot point to the moment one generation releases what another survived. What she knows is that when she placed her feet on that ground, she believed something in the family had completed a journey interrupted centuries earlier.
In the healing that can take place when one person becomes aware and recognize. Now, I'm not saying I know how the healing is taking place, but I know that it is. I don't know how the trauma was passed down through DNA. I don't know the ins and the outs, but I know it was. The healing begins. The healing has begun. And how it will transpire through the bloodline, I'm unaware of, but I trust and believe that it will.
Queen had spent years moving away from the life she had been expected to live. Then life carried her back to Detroit, her parents, back through grief, and back across the Atlantic toward a woman whose name she did not know, but whose survival lived in every generation that followed. For Queen, the journey did not end in the village, because becoming aware of what a family carries raises another question. What do we choose to pass forward? Queen's answer would lead her back to the classroom. Not the classroom where she had spent 27 years teaching, a different kind of classroom. One built for children growing up in a world their parents and teachers are still trying to understand. Children, Queen believes, need more than information. They need tools to turn inward.
Every family needs that one son or daughter that speaks their mind, doesn't like being told what to do, and is low-key healing the generational trauma that no one seems to be aware of. One of the first tenets of my nonprofit organization is just to raise awareness about generational trauma, just to raise awareness, because so many people are just unaware of it, you know. And the second thing is to create, promote, and produce educational materials for the upliftment and enhancement of, Generation Alpha.
In part 2, Queen turns towards the generation coming next, the first generation born fully into the 21st century, children who have been clicking and swiping since infancy, and a curriculum she believes began taking shape long before she knew who it was meant for. But first, she had to understand what had been carried to her and what might happen if she chose to carry something different.
If trauma can be passed down, then healing can be passed up.
This was part 1 of Queen's journey. In part 2, she takes what she discovered about ancestry, awareness, and inherited trauma and turns towards Generation Alpha. We will explore the children growing up almost entirely inside the digital world, the teachers trying to reach them, and Queen's belief that before young people can navigate everything outside of them, someone must help them understand what's happening within. You can learn more about Queen, her books, her travels, the Fula history, and Genealogy Society in America in the show notes, or visit her guest page at changehappenedpodcast.com. And while you're there, click to join our monthly newsletter, where you'll get updates from the pups and always a good recipe from my kitchen to yours. Until next week, I hope you keep finding your way. Change Happened, Then What? Is written, edited, and produced by me, Heather Holt, with supervision and lots of interruptions from Waylon and Dalton, here at Holt Hill Studios.
I must break to learn its speed. The loss must burn to make us sweet. The climb must hurt to lift the soul. The fight must forge the shining whole. So welcome, wait and call it grace. No progress blooms without the brave.